And good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to Foreman Boxing Magazine here on Provide, here at the shore. And we're here in Vibes at the Choice Bar and Grill in Atlantic City. Uh, just somewhat south of the beach, but we're here today. And a beautiful day. Kind of been warm for the last few days on the East Coast, which is typically unusual, but we're in the middle of a heat wave. So welcome to the Foreman Boxing Magazine. I'm your host. I'm Roy Foreman. Now, today we had expected to have a guest in, the former welterweight champion of the world, Donald Curry, and current International Boxing Hall of Fame inductee. But there was a family emergency, so he couldn't make it. But I'm here. So as we prepare for the 4th of July this week and America's bombing, fireworks and everything, explosions on the 4th, July the 4th, I think it's 240 something odd years since this country's been here. But there's still a lot of problems to work out, and boxing is one of the smaller ones. But there's still a lot of problems to work out. But anyway, we'll say happy birthday, America, today. So what I decided to do, since Donald couldn't make it, the champ couldn't make it, and this is a week of explosions and bombs bursting in the air, I thought I'd come up with, I wouldn't say boxing's greatest knockouts, but some of the best knockouts in the sport of boxing. And before I get to that, I'll kind of give you a little up to date on today's news that's going on in the sport of boxing. We've got, for those of you, if you follow boxing over the last 15 years or so, Carl Frampton had been from Northern England, Ireland, Irish, as a matter of fact. I think he's coming here. He's coming here to fight August the 10th in Philadelphia, of all places. Would have been great if we could have had him here during the week of the July 4th Independence Day, since we had to fight. He had independence from England. Been good to see him fight again, American again, to kind of blow that up a little bit more. But he's making as my understanding, I think it's his first fight stateside. So if he had another one, I'm not aware of it, but my understanding is making his first fight statewide. They call him the Jackal. That's his name, August the 10th. And the Leo Corus Center in Philadelphia. Hope to try to make that. John Ruiz is still making his celebratory travels around the world and country and winning the heavyweight title. Hasn't been back in the gym yet. And I think I said this about when he won the title. We'll see how long he goes through this I got your thing, I guess, or whatever, before he decides to get back in the gym. Because I said before, it's not always the fight that beats these guys. It's the fame that does it to them. So let's hope that, he gets back in the gym and make an idea of when he's going to defend the title again. I've heard all kinds of rumors, but he's not there yet. So we'll see. Not that I've heard of now. And I follow it pretty close, but haven't heard anything yet where he's going to be, or who he's going to defend his title. Some people are saying it'll be against Anthony Joshua in a rematch. And some people saying that Wilder and the winner Wilder and Ortiz and Fury. So, we'll wait and see. But as of yet, he's still going around getting his celebratory thing awards. Dennis Andre, he did his thing this past weekend to keep his Canelo hopes alive, as well as Charlo to keep his Canelo hopes alive. But all these guys have titles, but we know that the only reason that they're after Canelo, not so much for the pride, it's for the prize. And that's what boxing is. It's called a prize game fight. You know what I mean? It's at the end of the day, how much money you make. It's called prize fighting. It didn't start out as being boxing. It was called prize fighting. But they're waiting to see just exactly what's going to happen. Now, Eddie Hearns has said, who's the promoter of those two, of Andre, he is saying that he's going to get Golovkin or Canelo before the end of the year. I'm thinking this. I'm saying this. I'm thinking this. I don't know, but I'm thinking that you'll probably see Andre and Charlo before you see Canelo and any one of these guys. Okay, I just don't see it happening. Charlo won with a unanimous decision this past weekend in his hometown of Houston, Texas, and he did great. It was a decision, but he did what he was supposed to do, and that's that. But and Dennis Andre won a unanimous decision also with his title defense. Like I said, I think before you see Canelo take on any one of those guys, I think you're going to see a challenge thing where the winner, you could say, it wind up being the winner will wind up being the loser, but the loser will not get a chance. The winner will not get a chance to fight Canelo, and after they absorb enough punches from each other, then you'll see something like that. So that's just my opinion. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Now, what I kind of wanted to do was today, as I say, I'm kind of doing this because I expected a guest, but I'm going to make this. I'm looking forward to this in particular. I want to give the top 10, well, not 10, top 20 knockouts, not heavyweights, not middleweights, just top 20 knockouts, at least what I consider in boxing. And some of these guys you may have never even heard of, unless you really follow the sport. But better yet, they were still good knockouts. And I'm going to start with not necessarily in this order. Okay, so I don't want you to say, oh, well, we thought this was number one, this was number two. But I think that one, in my opinion, both of these young men in the late 90s, early 2000s were really some up and coming fighters. And their careers are kind of, one was going like this way, the other one was kind of here. He take a fight, then he go back down a little bit because he lose, but it was always competitive. But they both were pretty good fighters. As I mentioned the names, maybe you'll recognize them. But Derek Jefferson and Maurice Harris, that's a fight that at both times, at first it looked like Jefferson was going to blow him out. Then Maurice comes back. Then the next thing you know, boom, Jefferson comes back and hits him with the left hook that lays him flat on the floor. So those are heavyweights. Those are heavyweights. And it was a pretty good match, a pretty evenly matched. Maurice had a couple of fights that he had been in that people thought he could have deserved to win. That's why his name was always there, because the young man was always competitive. Maurice Harris, who's I think he's from Newark, New Jersey, if I can remember right. And Dave Jefferson, one of those guys who's big, strong, and he had a good career in boxing. Never got a chance to actually fight for the title or win the title, but he had a good career nevertheless. So I'll start with that one. The next one, I would probably think one of the greatest left hooks I've ever seen thrown in a boxing match was Joe Frazier. And that's when Joe Frazier fought Bob Foster. Now, he knocked Foster out. The fight didn't last no longer than a flea in a windstorm. Well, that's not exactly what it is, but a flea in a windstorm. And Frazier hit him with one of the most terrific left hooks. Foster came out. Bob Foster, as you well know, had been a light heavyweight champion for a long time, never actually lost the title, and had defeated everybody in the light heavyweight division that came up to challenge him. But he decided he wanted to jump into the ring with the big boys. Of course, again, you got this prize thing going on, right? Correct? Making more money. Take some Joe Frazier. It wasn't very smart. Maybe a smart business move, but it wasn't a very great move from a smart physical standpoint. Joe Frazier just annihilated him. Then that didn't last. No, I think it was like a minute and 20-some-odd seconds into the fight. Not exactly sure, but it was pretty close. My next one would probably have to be, and this really could be one of my top 10 or top 5 knockouts of all time. Okay, and I'm not just going to name heavyweights. In a minute, I'm going to get to some of the other weights as well. But this could have been one of my top 5 knockouts of all time. And this was a fight between Mike Weaver and Big John Tate. Now, this fight went on, back then, fights for 15 rounds. And this fight went on for a while. The rounds were back and forth. This guy wins this round. And a lot of people actually thought, and as I watched the fight, I thought maybe John Tate had a chance of winning this match. I really did. But just as before the bell rings, Mike Weaver catches him with a shot, bam, and when I say a knockout, and that's why this could be considered one of my greatest knockouts, is because he knocked him out. Tate fell flat on his face. And this was Mike Weaver's shot along getting the heavyweight title, and Hercules Weaver is what they called it. Muscle-bound guy. He and Ken Norton at that time, and George Foreman maybe at that time, may have been 3 of the most solidly built young boxers that you had seen from a fighting standpoint. They had the physical stature of what people call, the dynasties, I guess you say. So, but that was a sensational knockout. If you ever get a chance to pull it up. Weaver versus Tate. I think it was around about 19, let me see, I got the notes here, 1980 when that fight took place. It was a great time. Again, continued a great time in the heavyweights. My next one would probably be Liston and Patterson. Uh, Patterson was the champion, of course. Liston was the bad boy in the sport. You know, he had this thing where he never smiled. He looked tenaciously. I mean, he was just like that's what he was. He was another guy that had one of those the big shoulders and everything else. And I think I remember saying this before when I did my all-time greatest upsets about Liston, is that it was told that President Kennedy didn't even want Liston fighting for the title because he just didn't think that he was a good role model. But the fight with Patterson, Liston just annihilated him. Fight was over with. I guess. I mean, I want to say he dropped him twice, but the last time, whatever it was just over quickly. And Liston, being the kind of fighter that he was, did the same thing. It was all over it. He never smiled. He went over, got his robe like he always did, put his thing around him. Patterson was laying on the floor, writhing in pain because it was a tremendous shot. And that was it. Next one, again, I don't think it was that great of a fight myself. Good fight, not that great of a fight. And I would say Holyfield Tyson won because nobody expected this to happen to Tyson. Nobody. I mean, Holyfield had 3 bouts with some of the biggest guys in the sport of boxing. Mike Tyson may have been the first guy that he actually boxed that was smaller than him, with the exception maybe of Bert Cooper. He may have been one of the smallest guys, well, in the heavyweights, let's put it like this, because he had fought Dwight Quawi at the same time. But as far as when he moved up to the heavyweight division, Tyson may have been the smallest guy he fought. So that was a surprise, and mainly because Mike Tyson, even though he had been to jail, you know, he'd come back, he had won the title again. I think he beat I forget the guy, the first guy came out the ring and knocked him out. The guy with the pizza guy didn't last very long, and then he took on Joe Hip, destroyed Joe Hip as well. I just don't think that anybody thought that Holyfield, because he had this problem in the third bowl fight of some type of heart murmur deal, and people were saying this fight shouldn't even take place because Holyfield's not a well fighter. But Evander Holyfield continued during that period of time to fool everybody. And what happened? He goes out and gives Mike Tyson the whipping of it. He thought Buster Douglas beat it. Holyfield gave him a whooping. And the surprising part was that at the end of the fight, you know, Tyson's people said that it was on pay-per-view, but Tyson people cried that Holyfield used his head, he head-butted him. He did everything else he could to make the fight. And that was some headbutts that was over. So he used his elbows and all. But that had nothing to do with the punches landing. And Holyfield put a whipping on Tyson. And to this day, I think that was perhaps one of the biggest surprises. Like I said, not so much the biggest upset, because I think by that time Mike Tyson had started to lose everything that he had, during that period. That the mystique of his probably still exists until today, but I think he had started to lose a lot of that after the loss to Buster Douglas and a couple of more guys. Well, Buster Douglas in particular, and going to jail. I think he just had lost that himself. So I don't see that as being the biggest upset in boxing, but I think it was one of those things where it was just one of the biggest surprises in the sport of boxing. The next one I'm going to come and say Holmes and Tyson. Holmes and Tyson. There again, Larry Holmes, I think, was 37, 38, I'm not sure exactly, but Larry had retired from the sport and came back. And Don King offered him a bunch of money, from my understanding, to take on this fight with Mike Tyson. And if you look at that fight, Larry Holmes did some good things. Tyson was just a bomber. That's what he was. The guy came in throwing shots like you. That was just incredible. And he hit Larry with a right hand that just caught Larry. I think it was more off balance. Larry goes down and he gets up again. Okay, Tyson jumps on him again. And at this point in time, I'm thinking about the fourth round, fifth round, or what it was. Larry Holmes was just starting to kind of get his rhythm halfway. And he backs into a corner. And a lot of people miss this. But if you ever see that fight or get a chance to pull it up on Google or one of those fight archives things that's around, Larry Holmes was about to throw a right uppercut as Tyson was walking into it. His hands caught the rope. When he did, that was the end of that. Tyson hit him with a left hook, and that was all she wrote, and that was the end of that story. But like I said, not that was one of the greatest fights, but I'm talking about greatest knockouts, in my opinion, in the sport of boxing that I've seen, and maybe that I haven't not seen live, but more or less on television. Uh, and then again, we're coming here to you from Vibes here at the Choice Sports Bar and Grill in Atlantic City. Here down at the shore. Good, great place to be this time of the year. The weather's just great. It's just great. My next one, Frazier Foreman. Now, this was both a surprise and an upset. Uh, Joe Frazier was undefeated, had just beaten out Muhammad Ali back in March of 1971. He had, I think, 2 or 3 title defenses since that time. George Foreman was a 23-year-old kid who won the Olympics in 1968. Was a protege, and considered a contender because he had taken on guys like such as Vallo, Boone Kirkman, a couple of others that he had just destroyed. Gregorio Peralta, or some others, but he had just destroyed him. But he's a kid. He's fighting a guy that just beat one of the greatest boxers in the history of sports. And nobody thought that this should have been. First of all, they thought George didn't belong in the ring with him. Little known that would they think that George would beat him, but that's exactly what happened. Foreman knocks him down 6 times. That was the first one was a shock. Albert Cosell goes crazy. Even today, I hear somebody uses this commercial. It's this down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier. If your last name is Frazier in any capacity, somebody uses that down goes Frazier thing. But he drops him 6 times, and of course, Foreman wins the heavyweight title. But then the next part of this thing is that you move it together a year and a half later, almost 2 years. George Foreman is a part of another one of these great knockouts, except on this side of it, he's on the other end of it. Now, that was a big upset because I think the odds was something like 10-1 that particular night that he would just destroy Muhammad Ali. But as I've always said, sometimes when you climb into the ring, you can talk about the physical part of a guy, but you can't talk about the mental part of a fella. And that's what it was with Muhammad. He was willing to die in the ring. And I think in that particular night, being over in Africa where it was 4:00 in the morning, he just said, "Hey, you gotta kill me before I give it up. Before I give it up." And in the long run, George hit him with everything he could. And even to this day, I always ask him, say, Ali asked him one time, said, "Man, is that the best you got?" He said, "Yep," and that was it. And the next thing you know, he had Foreman on the floor, and Ali regains the championship. I think that was the second time, and Ali wins the title. One of my other was done in 1937. Now, I've only seen like a few clips of these fights, but it's still considered one of the greatest fights in history because at that time we were dealing with the war, the Nazi regimes. America hadn't fallen deep into it yet, but it still was a thing where the Nazis were thinking that they had the superior thing. If you remember, I can't remember whether I think it was the 1936 Olympics where Joe Louis, the track runner, it went over and just destroyed. What was his name? The guy that ran the track. I forget it. It'll come back to me. The super guy. Anyway, it'll come back to me. But anyway, and he had just destroyed the Germans over during the World War, during that Olympics. Joe Louis had taken on Max Schmeling a little before that, and Schmeling had stopped Joe, as a matter of fact. Joe was shocked. I mean, the world was shocked because here was this Joe Louis that was supposed to have been, at that time, Joe was the tough guy. Joe wasn't a bad guy, but the tough guy. In boxing, he was considered one of the best. Schmeling beats him. So in the second fight, Joe Louis was carrying more or less the weight of the United States he felt on his shoulders because he could not lose this fight to Max Schmeling. And of course, as you well know, if you follow the history of sport, the end of Joe Louis' story, you know that Louis went on to knock Schmeling out. It was like I said again, these are not necessarily the best fights you had or the greatest fights, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the knockouts. So this was pretty good. Now, my next one also is Marciano Walcott. And well, why do you say, well, how can that be? Because Marciano, everybody has their fans. He's the only heavyweight champion of the world to retire undefeated, 49-0. And I think Floyd Mayweather just They either tied or eclipsed. It depends on how you look at it. If you count the MMA, he eclipsed it. But if you look at that, it's just he finished 49-0, the same as Rocky Marciano, which is hard to do, period. Okay? But Marciano knocked out Joe Walcott with a stunning left hook the same way. I mean, these guys, during that period of time, the heavyweights were nowhere near the size that they became later on in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and especially into the 2000s now. You didn't have Primo Carnero, Max Baer. Those were considered big guys. They were big guys for them. They were like 6'2". Carnero, I think, was 6'7". You know, but he wasn't going to win anyway because he would just consider him a freak of nature, and then he got destroyed, of course. But you didn't have the size that you have these guys today. So nobody thought much of the punching style or prowess, rather, these guys. But Marciano was a punching machine. I mean, the guy just had tremendous balance and everything else. He had beaten Joe Louis, of course, you know, on Joe's return. Joe was 37 years old, had come back. And, you know, whatever it was for, the money, the name recognition, or to put a better name on Marciano's list. Anyway, he beat Joe Louis, and then he went on to destroy Joe Walcott and everybody else that he faced to be retired 49-0. But that was one of the other ones. Now, this next fight is considered one, to me, I think they call this the greatest 3 rounds in the sport of boxing. And it could be one of the greatest 3 rounds in the sport of boxing. That's Hagler-Hearns. I was at ringside for that fight. And I still remember, and a lot of people, I think, even missed this, because some things you just don't see on television. I think it was on pay-per-view, not pay-per-view, closed circuit at that time. But some things people just don't see. Hearns was actually coming out, not landing as much as Hagler was, but he was landing shots. And I just thought he had him winning the fight 1 round apiece. Let's put it like that. And it was on his way. And at the end of the second round, Hagler had this big cut right here over the top of his head. Referee comes to and tells his corner, said, if you can't stop it, I'm going to stop it. If you can't stop that bleeding, I'm going to stop this fight. Well, Hagler couldn't let that happen. Hagler goes out, and he just pushed pressure on. I don't know whether he had seen the fight with Ray Leonard and Tommy before, where Ray put the pressure on Tommy, and Tommy just couldn't take much pressure put on him. Tommy was a tremendous puncher. But when it came to taking punches himself, when the pressure was put on, he couldn't do it. And remember now, Tommy Hearns had come from like 135, 147 pounds, moved up in middleweights. So, and Hagler was a true middleweight, and perhaps one of the most truest of the middleweights you've ever seen. Because the guy I heard that even in training, he came back into the gym at like 165 pounds, 167 pounds. That's incredible. And when you see him today, maybe you know why. Either he has the greatest restraint for when it came to training, or his metabolism is unreal. But that's the way that's how he was. He was one of the, and perhaps there's no reason he may be considered one of the greatest middleweight champions of the world. Pavlik and Taylor. Now, he is one that you talk about fighters that never was the same. Jermaine Taylor had beaten Bernard Hopkins. That's enough said. He had beaten one of the greatest fighters in the history of the sport. So there was no way that this was supposed to happen. But they came out. They beaten Bernard twice, I should say. But they came out. Pavlik jumped on him. Boom. Had him hurt. And he come back, laid Pavlik out. We thought the fight was over with. The fight was over with. Next thing I know, punches continued to be thrown. Bam. Jermaine Taylor is knocked out. And now Kelly Pavlik is the middleweight champion of the world. Of course, we know it goes on after that. Pavlik just neither Pavlik or Taylor was the same, in my opinion. I don't know. They're supposedly Pavlik had some drinking problems, and he just couldn't handle the pressure of being the middleweight champion of the world. We're just not sure. But Jermaine Taylor has some. We don't know. He has some problems. So he just never was the same after that either. He had a couple of fights, but he never was the same Jermaine Taylor either. But that was a tremendous knockout as well. The other one, this is a fight that I must have been about 12 years old when this fight took place. And everybody was so excited because this was the first time Ali had ever come to Houston to fight. He took on Cleveland Williams in the Houston Astrodome. Cleveland Williams had been a guy that was another knockout puncher, and he was another guy I failed to mention about the stature, but this guy was just another one with those Herculean bodies, and everybody just thought, this is supposed to be a fight that Ali can win, but if Cleve Williams shows up that had done all the other guys, the fights that he had with the knockouts and power that he had, hey, maybe Ali had a chance to lose again. But Cleveland Williams had gotten shot by a state trooper just some months before with a 357 Magnum. Survived the shooting. I mean, that in itself was a surprise. But who would think that months later, Cleveland Williams will be fighting Muhammad Ali for the heavyweight championship of the world in the eighth wonder of the world, the Astrodome. And I think this is the fight that probably people had seen Muhammad or had not seen him, but this was the one time when they see him. I think he threw something like 15 straight punches to Cleve Williams' chin. I mean, right, rapid fire. Pop, 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 pop. That's the night he came on with the Ali Shuffle. All of that came out in that one fight. And that's the night that I think that really, really reborn the legend of the great one, Muhammad Ali. So, that's another one of those stories that you may have missed, or maybe you know it already. I'm just repeating it again, but that's another one. Now, my next fight, and then I'm saying again, this is not the greatest fight. This is one of the greatest knockouts that I think I've seen, was Bernard Hopkins and Joe Lipsy. And Bernard never really was considered a knockout puncher. Fundamentalist, probably one of the best fundamentalists in the sport of boxing, because he could break a fighter down like nobody ever seen. You go 8 rounds with Bernard Hopkins, 9 rounds. He didn't try to knock you out right away. He took his time. But by the time he got through with you at the end of most of those fights, the fight was over with before it went to the distance. But he won a lot of fights in the distance, but he wasn't the greatest knockout puncher. But this particular night against Joe Lipsy, I mean, he was just fantastic. And I think it started with an uppercut and then finished with a hook. And if you look on just about any highlight sensations, you'll see sensational highlights, I should say. You're going to see this particular fight in the middleweight division. Maybe not in all over, but definitely in the middleweight division. Bernard Hopkins, Joe Lipsy. Roy Jones Jr. and Virgil Hill. If you've ever heard a gunshot, that's what we heard the Radio City Music Hall that night. He hit Virgil Hill with a shot that nobody seen it coming. I mean, we just did, I did the color commentator for that particular fight for international feeds, and I'm right there ringside. And he hit Virgil in the side with a shot that, how do you just cripple a guy from a body shot? Let's put it like that. There was no head punching. It's a straight body shot. I mean, and I think DeVal was the last time Roy Jones had laid him out from New York. And that's the guy tonight they say that Roy Jones, that the guy put his soul advertising to the bottom of his feet. Because he knew when he got knocked out, his feet were going to be up and whoever company name was there. But this particular night against Virgil Hill, Roy just destroyed him. So that's another one. And of course, Roy Jones, it's considered one of the greatest light heavyweight champions in the world, and one of the greatest boxers. Then he actually won the heavyweight championship of the world as well. So not a bad one for that one either. Michael Nunn and Saul Colombe. That was another one. Now, Michael Nunn was one of the second to none, as he called himself. Again, here's a fight that the other guy was winning. That's just it. The guy was winning. And out of nowhere, Nunn comes with Michael Nunn had perhaps the fastest hands that I considered at that time in the sport of boxing as well. He was just unpredictable. That's what he was more than anything else. He had beaten some good fighters as well. I think he wound up losing. He beat Frank Tate out. I know he beat Frank Tate for the title. I can't think of some of the others, but that was his whole style. But this guy had some of the quickest hands you ever seen, and he just laid Saul out. Referee didn't even bother to count. That fight was over with. So that's one of mine as well. Carlos Monzon, and to me, one of the greatest names a fighter could ever have was Nino Benvenuti. I loved watching him as a middleweight champion. Anytime he was on television, I tried to catch that particular fight. It was one of those things that, you just you just wanted to see him. He was from Italy, as a matter of fact, and a lot of and Carlos Monzon, of course, was a great fighter on his own, but it was one of those fights that, again, you don't know who's going to win. One guy's get leading, and all of a sudden, punch comes out of nowhere. Bam! That's it. It's over. That's it. It's over. So, and that was a great. Now, Julian Jackson and Harold Graham is another one. And I think that if you go into boxing that you look at, there was also a good. Oh, there you the great one just came in. Okay. Oh, okay. There's a jam session. They just give me this right here. For the kid, okay, Jazz Kids 2019 jam session is benefiting the Jazz Kids. Eddie Morgan is giving ETM Enterprises. It's let me find it, July 16th and 30th, August 13th, 27th, 2019, right here. Oh, in the choice. Okay, after our show. Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. Cover charge is $15. Musicians are welcome to sit in. The doors are open at 7:30. Cash bar and food menu. But we'll be talking about it every week that I'm here. So if you want reservations, you call Ali Williams at 908-337-7845, vibesvenue@gmail.com, or email Eddie Morgan. Eddie Morgan is etmorgan14@msn.com. I'll repeat that again before I go out, so I'll make sure I said that again as I finish that. Okay, it's a great one just came. Eddie Morgan, I told you, heavyweight champion of the music here in Atlantic City. So anyway, Harold Graham and Julian Jackson. That was another fight that I thought was that's the thing about doing things live. You can step in. I love it. I really do. I mean, I love it. I just like it because you can kind of do things just off the cuff, especially when you get a chance for somebody who's doing something for the kids. I'm going to make sure I do that. Robinson and Gene Foreman, honorable mention, because these were the kind of fights that people just love to see. But back then, remember, these guys had 100 some odd fights. We're not talking about guys. Guys today have 35 fights and 40 fights, and their career is over. They consider that a great man. 35 fights. These guys were still fighting preliminaries, but a lot of times they were fighting, 6 rounds prelims, 8 rounds, 10 round preliminaries, rather leading up to the heavyweight, middleweight, or whatever world title championship may have been. So, that's the good thing. That's when the sport of boxing was really. It's great today. Don't get me wrong, because you got some great guys that are out there now, champions, and the money that these guys are making. That's probably the reason that they don't have to fight as long. Especially probably starting around the 1970s, when the person started jumping up into the hundreds of thousands, then the millions, and then when you consider, Mayweather and Pacquiao and a couple others, then hundreds of millions. So those guys back then, they fought for their life, and they fought for a reason. They wanted to be champions. A lot of it had to do with pride. You had communities that, in New York, for instance, you had guys like Rocky Graziano, who lived on this side. Then you had the guys like the Gene Foreman. You had the Mickey Walkers and all those other guys. And they lived like in the same neighborhood. It was a pride thing. You just don't have that anymore. And those guys didn't gripe over money. At least they didn't gripe over money. I'm not saying the managers didn't or the promoters that made it. But the fighters, they were just wanting to prove that they were the best. And I think that what happened with the sport of boxing, like everything else, whether it's any sport, once the money becomes the main main issue, it kind of gets diluted. And after the 70s, and in terms of HBO, Showtime coming in with the pay-per-view boxing, people had to pay. They didn't get a chance to see the fighters on TV like they did. Gillette had the Friday night fights. Then USA came in with USA Tuesday night fights. Top Rank had Friday night fights as well. Then it got to a point you had to start paying to see fights, and it hurt the local communities as well, because I think people got so used to staying at home. They just didn't have to go out and watch the fights anymore. Even local shows, people just thought they could catch it on TV. But that's not what it was. So we got to get back to the days maybe of where fights will become a little bit more advertised in the communities, because you got some shows that's being put on there. The Lamanna family does a great job with their shows here. As a matter of fact, there's a show July, I think it's on the 20th, here in Atlantic City, where Vinny Lamanna is fighting, and at the Showboat. and I'm hoping to try to get them in here. Maybe not. I won't be here next week. I'm going to be out in LA. I'm going to the SB, so I won't be here next week. But I'm going to try to see if I can get them on the show the following Tuesday, and maybe talk to him or his dad and have them talk about exactly what they're trying to do and how they're trying to build the sport of boxing in Atlantic City. Because I think they've had about I want to say 6 or 7 shows over the last year or so, maybe 2 years that they've had, maybe more than that. I could have missed some. But they've been doing a pretty good job of promoting the sport here themselves and trying to keep things going. Now, let me get back to some of my other fights and honorable mentions. As I said, those fights I gave you were like 20 of my best that I thought. A lot of more, because if we get to the point, you got Paul Williams and Sergio Martinez. That happened right in Atlantic City, the night of a snowstorm. And people came out that night to see Paul Williams. This was a guy that had knocked out every fight. I mean, this guy was a freak of nature. 6'3", 147 pounds. Just that's what he was. He was Tommy Hearns reborn, whatever it is. But that's who he was. And I thought I was going to see another knockout, and I did. But I saw Sergio Martinez get the knockout. That was devastating. That fights don't normally bother me, but I had become such a Paul Williams fan. It was a snowstorm. It snowed that night. And my wife was like, you're not going to the hole. I have to go see Paul Williams because I may not see him again. And we didn't, because Paul was involved in a tragic accident. And he no longer boxes. But still, in this short time, long and short time, had a great reign. And I consider him one of the greatest fighters of his time, of his era as well. But he lost the fight to Martin. I think he lost the second fight as well. But, it's just that in the welterweight was still one of the most devastating knockouts that I've experienced. Now you got Tyson Holyfield, like I said, one. Bo Holyfield, 3. Not so much, because Holyfield, this was before Holyfield had taken on Tyson. So quite naturally, people thought that's the reason that people thought he was no longer the viable Holyfield, because of what happened with him with the busted in the fight with him. So it's like, he's not the same as he was. But hey, he went on to become champion with, I think, two more times, beating Michael Moore once. He lost to Michael Moore, then I think he came back and beat him. I think that's what happened, but I'll let you know about that at another time. You can Google that too if you want to. But and then my other honorable mention, I guess, would be Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns. Ray Leonard was well known, of course. Tommy Hearns was kind of, was an up and coming, but he was more up than coming because he was in a major fight with one of the greatest fighters of all times, and Sugar Ray Leonard. And here was a fight that actually Tommy Hearns was winning. I mean, boxing superbly, doing everything they needed to do, but he got caught. Ray back, and this was the greatness of Sugar Ray Leonard came out, because when he went to his corner, Angelo Dundee told him, "You're blowing it, kid. You're blowing it." Now, that was the inspiration. Did Ray need that, or did Ray decide on his own that he was going to go after Tommy and get him? Well, whatever it is, that's what happened. He went and got it. And that created the legend of Sugar Ray Leonard, because he went on. He had to fight with Roberto Duran. In the first fight, he lost, but he came back and won the second time. Then he had another fight with Tommy Hearns that was kind of nondescript, and Tommy Hearns wound up. There was a draw, but a lot of people thought that Tommy Hearns deserved that fight to win at the same time. So, that's the way that's how boxing goes. And then there's some others that I could think of. Chavez was involved in quite a few knockout fights. Whitaker, we're trying to think of a couple of things. Had some Eddie Mustafa Muhammad. All of these guys. There's too many fights to name in this short period of time that we have. But those are just a few of my top 20 all-time greatest knockouts, in my opinion. You may not agree with that, but in my opinion. And before we close, I want to remind you, if you're here in the Atlantic City area, you can come by The Choice, which is where we are now, Inside Vibes. They're gonna have a jam session for kids on July 16th and July 30th, August 13th, 27th, August 13th and the 27th, 2019, here at 470 North Albany Avenue in Atlantic City. Musicians are welcome to come and sit in. Cover charge is only $15. helping children. Eddie Morgan's been doing this for a long time, so it's not like something he just started. He just said a couple of weeks ago when he was here that he was retired school teacher. I didn't even know that, but he's a retired school teacher. For reservations, please, and come by and help the kids. We'll be here earlier that day, so from about 6 to 7 o'clock. So come by and sit into the show, and just it should be an enjoyable time. For reservations, call Ali Williams at 908-337-7845, or you can come or call Eddie Morgan at 609-992-6728. Email them at etmorgan14 at msn.com, vibesvenue at gmail.com. Okay? It's a cash bar and food menu available. So come by, support the kids. We'll be here, and I'm looking so much forward to it. Again, thank you for tuning into Vibes. And this has been great. Again, we're going to reschedule and have the champ in here again. Like I said, next week I'm out in LA for the ESPY Awards, and hopefully I'll have some interviews that we can put on Provide for you guys to take a look at once I come back. Or I'll try to do a Facebook Live feed from out there if I'm able to. It should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. So, as always, thank you for tuning in to Provide your boxing coverage and boxing news. And always, as I say before I leave, we'll see you at the fights.